Am I allowed to share?
Of course.
Awesome.
And while you're doing that, you could also talk about your upcoming book and put your links in the chat for everyone.
Oh, well, I just happen to have the bookstore.org or bookshop.org page is open to it right now. But I don't have a cover yet, so it's very boring to look at this little square. But here is my short story
Bookshop.
collection that came out in 2022, which has been just a wonderful ride and is actually what I'm going to go through. A lot of that, a lot of the feedback from the short story collection was that I was just set this up and view this in slideshow mode. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Awesome. A lot of the feedback from my short story collection was that the beginnings of my short stories were really catchy. So a little bit about me. Actually, I should take this off. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I am on Threads and Instagram. But I was the former fiction editor at Witness Magazine. Before that, and I'm currently actually helping Barrel House again. But I was also the assistant fiction editor at Barrel House. I'm reading for them right now. I'm attending and speaking at their conference next month. Before that, I was the assistant editor at Cream City Review and the fiction editor at Sheepshead Review. My day job, I was most recently the editor-in-chief of two technology publications. Currently, I'm the head of a large technology professional association. And, they pay the bills. Still working with words, though, which is, my calling. So a little bit about entry-level short stories. They contain 15 stories. I think 11 of them had been published elsewhere. And it got a lot of really good buzz. It was on NPR. It was in Washington Post. It got all the reviews were really solid, and it was a finalist for some awards later. And a lot of that also got me invited to be a judge at a couple of different contests. So it was featured in People magazine, it was on the other side. Like my face was in People magazine, first of all, next to Colleen Hoover, which is weird. And if you flip the other page, it was Christopher Maloney's nipple is right where my head was. So that was just a bizarre experience. Fun fact, that was a selfie. They did not want my actual author shot because of the way they had to crop it. My hair was going to make me look like I had a mustache. So that was a selfie that I took before going to get my mammogram, my annual or my yearly mammogram. So mammogram selfie for the win in People magazine next to Colleen Hoover, looking like she had a glamour shot. But one of the things that frequently people were talking about is that the starts of the stories were something that really hooked them. And, even interviews that were done, people were talking about great opening lines. And I started thinking, yeah, you know what? I really do have a personal, I don't know, theory or zeitgeist about how a story or a novel should open. I feel like if you cannot get it off the ground, in the first 5 pages for a novel or 1 page for a short story, you might have already lost your reader, meaning the reader being like the editor or the agent who's connecting with you. And of course, we've all been at the Henderson Writing Group's literary conference, and we've all been in the first page rooms and heard that happen live. And it's really powerful. I've even done that as an exercise at Witness, where I had all of the readers sit around and put their hands down when they would stop reading, or put their hands up when they would stop reading, and watch the senior editors and see what they were doing. And it was pretty eye-opening. So here's my formula. There's a couple of rules that your first page needs to do. It needs to engage that suspension of disbelief as fast as possible. You need to bring the reader into the now immediately. if you can. And that is the hardest thing to do. That's like saying, well, just go ahead and levitate. It's not a big deal. It's impossible, right? It's really difficult. But there's a couple of ways that you could ease yourself into doing this. You're never going to write a first page in the first draft that probably does this. I mean, unless you're Shirley Jackson, you might. But most of the time, this is going to be something that we're going to be doing in the editing room. So, and I'll get to that a little bit more in a bit. But essentially, your big tell for a working first page is that it's going to reveal the core character and what they are going to perceive the struggle to be. Now, that might not be the real struggle. It's just what are they worried about now in this moment on the first page? And that's not to say you can't start with a non-primary character or start with something else's background. I'm just saying it's difficult. It's difficult to engage it if you really want to front load your story with something that is going to grab editors right away. It's like a first date. It is very much first impressions. You want your reader, editor, agent, or an actual reader to kind of fall in love or at least be like, okay, I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to see what's going. Where is it going? And the first impressions matter, right? You want to have your best footing for that first page, because when I was reading even now when I still do, those are all either low paid or volunteer positions for literary magazines. And I might have to go through 500 submissions in 2 months. I have my regular job. I have a partner. I have pets who need me. I have to go grocery shopping and taking showers and, doing the laundry and living my life. So I can't, if you're thinking about 5,000 to 8,000 word stories and you've got 500 of them, that's over 1,000,000 words. I'm not going to read that much. I am going to read for sure the first page and maybe the second page. And by then I know as an editor that I'm out, or there should be at least a hook that's going to keep me reading. Whatever it is, there should be a guess. But if there's no hook, there's nothing wrong with it, but there's no hook, I'm going to pass on, because the spots are so competitive that I don't have the luxury of continuing to read every single thing. So there's 6 rules. Your first page should be directly relevant to the story. It should hint at or reveal the larger conflict. It should show what's at stake. It should give some kind of idea about whether the character fails or succeeds, or what will happen if they do. So it's kind of the same thing, show what's at stake, but not quite. It should introduce the primary character and show why the character cares or think they care about the conflict. I'm going to pause here. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts or questions? Bryn.
It might be a better question for later because you might be answering this, but I think in the case of editors or agents or even somebody who grabs your book off the shelf, they don't just usually start with the first page. They might have that one sentence. They might have a whole pitch paragraph. They might have that one sentence. They might have the cover blurb or something. And so I guess I'm just kind of wondering about the artificiality of putting it all on the front page, first page, as if it really is that blind date. I know nothing about this person, but instead you have something going in, and even if it doesn't mean the first page can be sloppy, but there isn't there is a background that they will have with the first page.
That's a really good point, Bryn. In general, I'm treating this as though it is going, your editor is reading it in a blind submission pile, or you're submitting your work to a fellowship where you would not necessarily have the luxury of like the synopsis or the pitch that you would with an agent. Typically, if you have an interesting pitch, they'll still read the first page. even kind of knowing what it is. But if it doesn't grab them, and I've been told this by agents, if it does not grab them or hook them in really fast order, they just don't have enough time to spend with it. So while yes, I think you're right, I think that there, in most cases, once your book is already published, you've got that marketing information on the back page. You've got a cover that's going to be details about your book. But to get you there, you still have to stand up to the first page test. And I do think I am going to cover some of
Yeah.
this. In
I'll probably add an amendment after hearing more. Thank you.
Okay. I can't see everybody, but I see Wolf and Laura have their hands raised.
Hello, Wendy. I had that discussion at another critique group where the story opened with the whole first paragraph was setting. No, not even the character, but the actual location. And in my opinion, it wasn't even necessary, but that's what it was. And so I pointed out to her she should open with action, and I specifically mentioned as examples the opening of The Martian and Colin Hoover's current bestseller. And her response was that she tried it that way, and her beta readers felt lost, and they wanted the setting at the beginning. And to a certain degree, I'm wondering if that is an age thing because older readers are more used to that. You know, that used to be like a thing in RWA that you gave the reader the setting in the first paragraph, or and then that younger people are more, like The Martian, where you open with straight action. He doesn't even tell us until the third page that you're on Mars. Yeah.
Right. So, Wolf, I think you answered your own question. Readers have tastes and predilections and interests, and I do think that if you were used to reading books that have lavish settings, I think cozy mysteries do this a lot. I tried judging a cozy mystery once, and I was just like, I am not your audience. Like, this is just not gelling for me. But in terms of what generally, I mean, I think you do get some room in, to establish setting. But there's ways to establish setting that isn't just, I'm going to paint a picture right now. There's ways to insert plot and, what's at stake, and certainly characterization within the setting itself. You can describe a house like 80 different ways based on, and this is actually a good prompt, 80 different ways based on how the person is viewing the house and how they're describing it, and you can tell the emotional state of like the character based on how they're describing it. So there's ways you can do this, but I do think you're right. I think that I also struggle with, and I include myself in this, nobody gets to tell you how to write also. You're only guaranteed to satisfy one person, and that's you. So I don't know that necessarily, you can always listen to other people's advice, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right way. So, I mean, you gave that person really good information in that the way that they have chosen to address the, change wasn't working for you. But ultimately, it's their decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks. Laura?
Hi. For me, I write nonfiction. So this is a little bit, when you're having the great first page, it seems like it's a little bit more for fiction. But at the same time, instead of maybe conflict, it could be what is the problem that you're having to explain how you're going to fix that problem, I guess. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, it is a conflict. Yeah, the problem is the conflict. How am I going to fix the problem is definitely, and also you might with nonfiction, if it was, I'm not sure exactly what it is you're referring to, but also it can sometimes be describing the problem is kind of setting up the conflict. It's almost like setting up the setting. But has everybody read like those recipe blogs that you just want to find out how to make like a refrigerator
Yes.
cake, and instead
Yes.
they're going to tell you about the time that their grandpa like wrote a bowl? Like, don't be that recipe blog.
Okay, that makes good sense. Yeah. I hate those things.
Yeah, everybody does, right? And that's why you're just like, I just want to make my chocolate eclair refrigerator cake. And that really speaks to who we are as readers, right? That frustration, and that I know I'm going to get something good out of this. Don't make me wade through a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, I think modern readers, to Wolf's perspective, modern readers expect a little bit more immediacy. And our role as writers is to do that in a way that's satisfying for us, but also serves the story in a way that also interests the reader. All right, any other questions? All right, I want to show this in practicality and look and so that you can see how other writers have done this. So the first one, I had to show Hunter here because Vegas. We were somewhere near Barstow when sorry, I can't see the oh, there we go. We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, I feel a little bit lightheaded. Maybe you should drive. And suddenly there was this terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and diving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas. And a voice was screaming, holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals? So, do we have stakes? I'd say, right? They're going to die. Maybe I want to see them die. Maybe I want to see them how they get through it. Is this first page relevant to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? Yeah, the whole novel is basically two guys go to Las Vegas and engaged in constant drug use while thinking about the American dream. This is setting us up. I know I'm going to have a drug-fueled, like, crazy escapade in this novel, just from the first paragraph. We meet the narrator and Dr. Gonzo, so we do kind of meet the main characters. We're not sure if they are the main characters yet, but we meet them. And what's at stake? Well, they could die. Maybe we don't want to see them die. Maybe we do want to see them die. But I'm going to keep reading. Okay, so that's one example. Here's another one, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. I am an invisible man. No, I am not a spook like those who haunted Edgar Allan Poe, nor one of your Hollywood movie ectoplasms. I am a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids. I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, you see, simply because people refuse to see me. I am not complaining, nor am I protesting either. It is sometimes advantageous to be unseen, although it is most often rather wearing on the nerves. Then, too, you're constantly being bumped against by those of poor vision. Or again, you often doubt if you really exist. So if you've ever read Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, and you should, if you haven't, it is a magnificent piece of art. But this unnamed protagonist, we never know what his name is spending most of the book, or if not the entire book, dealing with systemic racism and his own identity. How does he fit in this world as an incredibly intelligent person who is constantly not seen by society? Does it apply to the book? Does this first paragraph apply to the book? Yeah. I mean, it's basically telling you the thesis for the book. Do we have stakes? Definitely. Do we care? I do. Maybe we feel like this for various reasons, or we have empathy for this condition, or we want to learn to see what we're not seeing. So very valid, very, very, it's going to make me continue to flip the page. Here's another one. I actually just met him at AWP last week. I was very excited. I consider this to be one of the most perfect short stories ever written. And by Robert Owen Butler. I can never quite say as much as I know. I look at other parrots and I wonder if it's the same for them. If somebody is trapped in each of them, paying some kind of price for living their life in a certain way. For instance, hello, I say, and I'm sitting on my perch in a pet store in Houston. And what I'm really thinking is, holy shit, it's you. And what's happened is I'm looking at my wife. And the short story is called Jealous Husband Returns from the Dead as Parrot. I can't see the top of the whole story, but that is essentially it. The title explains it. So to Bryn's perspective, we do know a little bit about it because we know the title. Is the first paragraph relevant to the story? Because yes, he's reincarnated as a parrot. What's the conflict? He's trapped inside of a parrot. What's at stake? He's trapped inside a parrot. Why do we care? He's obviously brokenhearted. We have some comeuppance, a sense of Schadenfreude here. He says he was paying some kind of price for living their life in a certain way. So maybe he's the villain. And then this idea of being able to connect with a loved one. Incredibly relevant, incredibly amazing story. Highly recommend you check it out. It's available. If you want to search for it, you can get it online. But you're hooked, right? Jealous husband returns as parrot. You got to read it. Let's look at another one. Pride and Prejudice. One of the best, right? It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. That's very famous. That's a very famous opening. Not a lot of people know the other bits of the opening. However, little known feelings or views such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. My dear Mr. Bennet, said his lady to him one day, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last? Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. But it is, returned she, for Mrs. Long has just been there and she's told me all about it. Do you not want to know who has taken it? So, knowing what you do about Pride and Prejudice, is this relevant to the story? Yes, I see heads nodding. Yes. What's at stake? Well, we don't quite know because at this point, we are 250 or 220 years after this was written. But if we had been reading this at the time that Austen wrote this, we would understand that ladies had to get married to rich gentlemen, or they had no ability to make their way in life. So we do know that there's stuff at stake. We don't actually know who the main characters are at this point. We know about Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. We've kind of been introduced to them. Sadly, Mrs. Bennet never has a name. I think her name is Jane because she named her oldest daughter Jane. And in the second page, Mrs. Bennet says, Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I am sure she is not half as handsome as Jane, nor half so good-humored as Lydia, but you are always giving her the preference. So we kind of can see some of the ways that the mom feels about Lizzie versus Jane and versus Lydia. And we know that her dad favors her, but other than that, we haven't really met Lizzie. But is it relevant to the story? Yes, absolutely. We see what's at stake because we know it, inferring it as a 1816 reader. And we're going to be on the side of the Bennets, right? We're going to be on the side of the young ladies who need to possess a man of a good fortune. Okay, let's keep going. This is fun. So just to sum up, again, be relevant to the story, directly relevant to the story, should hint at or reveal the larger conflict, show what's at stake, show or hint at what happens if the character fails or succeed, introduce the primary character, and show why the character cares or think they care about the conflict. You'll see that not all of these pages that I've shown you have done all of these things, right? So we like the jealous parrot. We don't know what's going to happen if the character fails or succeeds. We can maybe guess, but that guessing sometimes can be the carrot that the reader follows too. In some ways, they want to be proven right or to pre-guess an ending and then be delighted when they're wrong, like we do when we read Agatha Christie, for instance. So sometimes red herrings are equally as satisfying for readers. But this should serve as kind of a good checkmark list for you when you're thinking about your own first pages. It doesn't have to hit all of these, but it should at least hit one of these, if not two. I want to show you through, I'm going to skip a couple of these. Oh, this is one of my favorites. This was written, this was a submission to Witness magazine by Amber Wheeler-Bacon. And I would say I read to the 4th paragraph and I knew already I was going to take it. I read the rest just to make sure it didn't go insane or be something that was like napalm. They call me crazy here. To stay out of jail, my county-appointed lawyer and I agree, yes, I'm crazy. The food, at least, is better in the hospital. Didn't take a shit for days last time I was in jail, partly because I didn't eat and partly because how am I supposed to do business with nothing but a curtain between me and 100 other women? So I'm here at the hospital when the rivers begin to flood. The Lumber and the Petey and the Waccamaw rivers are flooding in North Carolina, and the flooding will soon reach me, only I don't know it yet. I don't know the governor has called for evacuating the hospital. I don't even know it's raining, and it's been raining for days because I don't have a window. I only know I miss my baby. My baby has dark hair and dark eyes. My baby shines. My baby looks like an angel. There is a light that comes from my baby. They took my baby because they said I was crazy. They used a different word, something I can't pronounce. They said I was on drugs, and now I'm in their hospital, and they give me more drugs. They give me drugs so I can sleep and eat and wake and shit. So there's a lot, a lot in there. Thinking about the checklist again. Do we know what's at stake? There's a lot, right? The narrator's in jail. The narrator is in the path of flooding. The narrator is being drugged. The narrator might have hurt their baby. I guess it confirms the narrator is a woman because 100 other women. And we might be hoping that the narrator gets the baby back, or we might be afraid that the narrator is going to get the back. We're worried about the baby. And then by the 5th paragraph, we go back to the flood. The story is really challenging because it's taking the camera and it's going back and forth between all these stakes. And I like that personally. You might not, but you have to admit we must keep reading, right? We have to eat. Like, are you like kind of annoyed that you can't keep going because I haven't shown you the whole story? Hi, Tanya.
Something I noticed about this is the swerves. Like we're only on the first page and here's this first paragraph that already seems like it's complete. And then, oh, by the way, I'm at the hospital and the rivers are about to flood. So now we're thinking about that. There's this flood but I miss my baby. Like twice in a row, we've had this swerve of like, okay, we're already in it so much. And then she goes into this paragraph about her baby, and you're like, okay, but she is crazy.
Right. There's a light that comes from my baby.
Right. Like, I get that you love your baby, but also you sound a little manic right now, So if nothing else, she's that. But you're just so invested. And yes, I do want to read this whole story. So
it's in the episode. It's in the
archives.
It's in Dark Holidays, Witness magazine, Dark Holidays. I think it should be online. And Amber recently, she's got a book coming out, and I can't wait to read it. Because yes, like Tanya said, there's so many swerves going on here. And this is a little chaotic and a little frenetic, and that might not work for you, and that might not be satisfying for you. But hey, this is an option. This works. And it is so chock full of conflict and voice and setting and stakes that, man, it checks all the boxes. Let's keep going. I'm going to skip over those two. I want to go to this one because I want to show you one that is not, does not have these stakes. Alton found the house without trouble. It was a neighborhood of sagging chain link fences and unkept lawns, but 533 Groff was freshly painted, the grass trimmed and bright green. The garage door was down. He pulled to the curb at the end of the block and sent a text to the number Val had given him. There was no reply, but when he drove around the block and came back, the garage was open. He eased past it and put it in reverse and carefully backed the panel truck into the drive. The stack waiting in the middle of the garage was mostly boxes, along with a tent and some camping supplies, a nightstand, a set of chairs, 5 big trash bags with shoes and clothes spilling out, and some mismatched luggage. In the middle of it all was this big sturdy kitchen table that he could already tell would be a bitch to move. There was nothing against any of the walls, just a pile in the center of the space by itself, as though to avoid contaminating the rest of the house. So, this is an example similar to what Wolf brought up. The first paragraph is just pretty much establishing setting. We don't really learn anything about Alton here other than the fact that he can find an address. There's a slight conflict because nobody responds, but then they do. So it's like resolved. So why even? Second paragraph, a lot of stuff. Why do we care about this stuff? Middle of the paragraph, we learn that he has to move the stuff. But other than that, I still don't know anything about Alton. I still don't know why he's doing it other than, like, is he, one man in a truck? Is he, getting something from Buy Nothing Group? We don't know. And he uses some language in there that seems like, okay, maybe he's a little tough. There's a little hint there, but that's really all we get of Alton. We don't have a hook here. There's nothing wrong with this. It just, I personally don't feel like there's enough here for me to keep going. But I did because I was curious. Because like I said, there was nothing wrong with this. So Alton opened the back gate of the truck and looked back and forth. He'd have to take everything off the table and put it in the truck first, then force the other stuff in around the edges. It looked just big enough. He went around to the front porch and knocked on the door. The silence was the silence of wary attention, not the silence of an empty house. He waited a full minute, then knocked again. The window a couple of feet to the left of the door slid open a few inches, and he caught a glimpse of a hand moving it, but with the way the sun glared off the screen, he couldn't see much inside. I took a picture of you and a picture of the truck with the license plate, a woman's voice said. I sent them to a friend. If you try to come in here, I'll call the police. Okay, this is the first ting, right? This is the first real ting of, like, a little bit of conflict, and that's why I have the little blue arrow here. You, Calla, I'm Alton, Val's cousin. He stooped and tried to peer through the screen and had a sense of someone stepping back quickly, deeper into the dim interior of the house. I don't need to know who you are. Val's stuff is in the garage. That big table hers? Yes, that too. Everything in the garage. You mind giving me a hand? That's a lot for one guy. I'm not coming out. Alton straightened up. Gonna take me a while working alone. I ain't young anymore. The woman didn't say anything. He couldn't tell if she was standing near the window. He shrugged and went back to the garage and started moving things off the table. So I would argue the story starts with Alton starting to move the stuff. That said, this was 27 pages of this. And it was just, I mean, you could see there was a lot going on there where the writer is writing really cogent sentences and they're giving lots of, show, don't tell. But at the end of the day, it's a lot. And what I call this is runway writing. This person needed as a writer to write themselves to that scene. It was necessary. Just like when you take a trip, you definitely want to take off from a runway. Could you imagine if the plane just started from like a Harrier jet and you just lifted straight up? Like, that would not be fun. So the plane needs the runway to get off of the ground, and your stories might too. If you don't like the airplane analogy, when you're laying a brick, if you're doing like a curved arch, you have to build a support structure to get the bricks to stay in that arch setting. So you could think of that writing as this kind of brick form. It was necessary to make the effect, but then when you're done, when those bricks settle, you don't need it anymore. And then another way to think about this is curlers. If you want your hair to look a certain way, you set your hair with curlers. Now, you would not necessarily go out like this unless you're Lady Gaga, which, more power to you. But your beautiful locks did not take that, those shapes organically. You had to help them. You needed some support to get there. So I don't want anybody to think about that extra stuff, like that page and a half of Alton dealing with the garage full of stuff, as wasted work. It wasn't. It got the writer where they needed to be, which was towards the end of the second paragraph or second page. They just didn't need it after that. So when I say that I think that this edit is really happening in editing, it's because you're not aware of what was runway until you got there, until you got to where you needed to be. So think about the first, second, whatever drafts as you telling yourself the story. You needed it to get there, but you didn't know what you didn't need until you got there. The last draft is you telling your reader the story. The reader doesn't need the runway. The reader doesn't need to see the curlers. They need the story. Every word, every detail is a coin that you're spending of the reader's attention. So make sure that they're doing only the job you want them to do. All right, I know I've been talking a lot, but I just want to go through. I have a couple of things that I've seen that are really, really hard first paragraphs to pull off really well. It's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's not to say you can't think of a million people who have probably done this. I'm just saying we see a lot of really bad first paragraphs doing these things. So that's why I bring them up. All right, first of all, the fake out. Does anybody know what this still is from? Oh, Tanya does. I'm not surprised Tanya does. Go ahead, Tanya.
Sorry, too many mice over here. I'm grabbing the wrong one. Isn't it from Cabin in the Woods?
It is from Cabin in the Woods. A horror story about a cabin in the woods starts in a very bland-looking office building in what seems to be a really sad cafeteria. It's the fake out. You expect to see teenagers in a cabin in the woods, and instead you have, a benign office building and what looks to be the worst coffee machine ever. Hard to pull off. I would say it works here, but it's really hard to pull off. Other examples of fake on openings, the beginning of Bring It On, Torrance is cheering at a pep rally and suddenly she's naked, except, it's a dream. It's a dream ones are really hard to pull off. It's like a subgroup. The Road also starts the same way. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire also starts with a dream. It's a fake ending, or it was a premonition. The opening of The Fifth Element, if you remember that, it's a really high-tech sci-fi, with multipass, but it starts in Egypt in the 1920s. Aziz Light, and it's hard to fake out. Another one is anytime where there's a dream or a flashback on the first page, it's probably going to be difficult to pull off. It happens, certainly. I've just given you a bunch of examples where it happens, but it's really difficult. We see it a lot, and it's usually not. It starts to take on the, like how there are certain colognes that you smell that associate you with bad people, and you just maybe it's like your 8th grade math teacher or something, and you just don't want your first page to have your 8th grade math teacher's cologne or trigger those kind of negative thoughts. So if you want to avoid it just for that reason alone, it's not a bad idea. Another one that we saw a lot was anywhere where the character wakes up, opens a door, or looks out a window, that's the first paragraph. I get it. People start their days by waking up, the alarm's going off. Start where the story actually starts. I doubt it starts with the person waking up. Another one is introducing too many characters too quickly. You'll notice Alton almost did that. I don't know if we needed to know about Cousin Val. And this one's hard. Here's an example. Ella looked out the window. Her neighbor Annalise Crabapple was outside, and her dog Sir Elton John Grumpkins was digging through Ella's freshly planted petunias. The dog had received a verbal warning from Sheriff Dwayne L. Biggerhats last week for doing exactly the same thing, and Sheriff Biggerhats promised to take Sir Elton, aka Snookums, to the pound if he kept it up. Annalise swore that if Ella called the cops on her Snookums again, Annalise would never speak to Ella again and certainly never share another batch of Aunt Bernice's famous gooseberry jam. But Ella couldn't worry about that right now because if she didn't translate the ancient manuscript that would open a portal to the underworld by midnight, there wouldn't be any petunias left to worry about, and Aunt Bernice would never again make gooseberry jam because there would be no gooseberries or jam or Aunt Bernice left after the ancient demon Blorpoo brought forth his fallen angels led by Nildis and Tignanathek, who both hated gooseberry jam. I wrote this, and I don't know why I gave names that I cannot pronounce, but that was just a failing on my part, so sorry about that. Too many characters will always confuse people, and it just creates havoc. So bring your camera close to your primary characters is usually a good plan, and then start sprinkling those other characters in later. Cold open dialogue is also really difficult. Now, obviously, you're going to think of, I can think of one that works, a beautiful, beautiful story. Where's Papa going with that axe? Fern said. Great, great story, right? Does anybody know what that's from? I know Tanya does. It was from Charlotte's Web. Cold open, but that one works, right? We have for a couple of different reasons, because it introduced conflict. And we know that Fern is a little girl from Papa, and there's a lot of other, so it does kind of work. But if E.B. White were here, I'd be like, maybe a sentence before that there, maybe something, just so I can understand who Fern is. Also, too many words to say one thing. I have a problem as a writer, as a drafter, where I will often come up with like 3 different sentences that I love how they sound, but in actuality, they say all the same thing 3 different times. One of my writing professors used to call it hitting the nail on the head 3 times when one would do. Like, pick your favorite. And then there's always the advice of, reducing your sentence length. So weasel words are empty calories. Dave Housley from Barrel House said, if you have the word that in a sentence, 97% of the time you can remove the word that and not notice a difference. It just goes away. So that's one of the weasel words. Matt, that's one of Dave Housley's weasel words. Here are Matt's weasel words, and you can see this in his newsletter or his craft book, Refuse to be Done. He goes through this. These are his weasel words, and I always like, oh, nobody even cares about this. I had my manuscript for my upcoming novel was when I finished with it, 119,000 words. And I had to get it down under 100,000. So I'm like, I have to lose 19,000 words. Oh my God. How do you do that? That's like a sixth, right? And I started with this list, and I wasn't even through the 3rd line, and I was already down like to 111,000. I had taken out 9,000 weasel words just by going through and also looking at every sentence. And if it was like 11 words, I tried to make it 9 words. So just try to tighten. But the fewer words you can get it done, like I said, every detail is a coin, and you're spending a coin every word of your reader's attention span. So condensing and making sure that if you're going to be wordy, that's fine, but make sure those words are earning their real estate. And these are our automatic red flags. We had a lot of stories that started with what I called sad garage sale. It's where like basically people are getting rid of stuff and telling stories about all the stuff that they're getting rid of. Somebody said, if it's not better than Raymond Carver's Why Don't You Dance, then don't even bother. And who can compete with that? Some whatever character is sick stories, we have a lot of those where the plot device is that this person who maybe was selfish is now forced to care for another person. Heavy-handed dialogue and unnatural dialogue were huge red flags. A big thing that we have is just like notice how many times you use something instead of the word said. So dialogue tags that are not like queried and whined and whatever, like use those very sparingly, because the eye just skips over said. But if you start using a million synonyms for said, it starts to become noticeable. And additionally, note how many times characters use the first names of the people they're talking to. Like if I'm in a room and there's just with one other person talking, I'm not going to use their name. So for them to use their name in dialogue repeatedly is always like, it just seems unnatural. Additionally, we had red flags of bad people doing bad things for bad reasons. That's not to say your villains can't do bad things, but they need to understand, or the reader needs to understand why they think that's a good idea, because nobody's the villain in their own story, right? And reliance on adverbs or colorful dialogue tags. I got into that, but adverbs are words that end with ly. We see writers really, cramming in a bunch of ly words. Then generally they don't have the goods to back that up. All right, this was a lot. What questions? Oh, these are funny. These are actual things that we got at Witness. People were just being really weird with the formatting. And then there was another one that I got that was all 22-point font, Enya font. That was insane. So they like handed in like this 68-page story that was only like 7,000 words, but the font was huge and it was all this incredibly florid script font. Like, don't, like, our eyes are hurting usually when we're reading, and don't make it more difficult. All right, well, that is enough. So I open to questions. I've talked a lot.
Go ahead, Bryn.
Okay, that was great, except now I'm really insecure about that because I feel like I don't use that in my normal speech, but somewhere I feel like I learned that I need to use more of that. And I do have a manuscript that has to be 90,000 words because the agent who's probably representing it, that's her cap. So I can't wait to, but I'm kind of embarrassed and worried that there are other words like that in that
You're
list.
Gonna find your own.
That
mine was actually,
and now trying not to say that, I'm using that every third word. So yeah, so it's one of these things that, oh my gosh, thank goodness I came here because it didn't feel natural. Then I betrayed my instincts and put it in everywhere. Yeah, so I'm curious. I wonder if it's going to be 3,000. But the other thing I was going to talk about or ask you about is the fake out. So um, an example you used was from the cabin in the woods, right? And this very mundane. I love the use of mundane descriptions or even mundane actions when it's deliberate contrast. For example, a hugely dramatic scene, but people are barely moving. They're just doing these mundane things. So the contrast between the inner world that's like this hellstrom and then picking up a pen, right? And that works. And in the cabin in the woods, I love horror. I've seen that. What works for me about that sort of fake out is if I were to buy the book or watch the movie, I would know it's horror and it's cabin in the woods. And so automatically there's tension in the mundane. And I would even venture that in that example with the realtor, that paid, not the realtor, the looking by the house. That was the first example you gave where it was not until the second page. Yeah, the runway. Every sentence you read, I thought, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care what the address is. Why are you giving me the numbers?
Right.
That seemed author indulgent. But if I knew that the title of that book and this isn't trying to keep arguing what I was saying before about context, but at the very least, if I know the title is the serial killer realtor, then I'm going to read those things as, oh, this is tense. What's going to happen? Like, when does the axe come out? So, I don't know. There must be a question in that, but mostly, is there a way to have that sort of contrast, to build that contrast into a first page, or is there just so much, is there so much onus on the first page to have a lot of those qualities that if you break out with something that's going for that kind of device, it's rarely going to work for you.
I don't think it's rarely going to work. I think that what I saw a lot when I was, literally hooked up to the fire hose of reading all of these things. And then, of course, when I judged the Pen America short story debut collection, I got to see even more short stories because each short story collection was 15 short stories times 35. And what I see a lot is that people are doing it because they think it's cool rather than intentionally serving the story. And sometimes they don't have the prowess to accomplish it. So it's like you're trying to do the Michael Jordan layup shot from the 3-point line, but you've never really practiced dribbling the ball. So if you can make the shot, make the shot. I love it.
Okay.
That's just like, be aware of what you're going into, that it is, you're going to approach it differently than you might if you were doing a standard, here's the story you're reading. I remember once I was in a workshop and somebody started with Steve woke up and nothing was what it appeared to be. And I'm like, I don't know anything about Steve. I don't know what it was supposed to appear to be. Like, I don't care, like it's not, don't tell me what it isn't, tell me what it is. So sometimes that can be frustrating, and maybe those people aren't your reader too. So
Thank you. Yeah, I've struggled with what I would call rule breaking. If you think about AI as being the apotheosis of adhering to some rule and a lot of M dashing, you can really suck the life out of
right.
words to be so adherent to formula. And exemplar of that is your first pages of these famous books that you read. I can't remember which one, like The Invisible Man. I don't know if that was the one, but there was one I was like, even that first paragraph, I bet if that were run through a read and critique group, somebody would say, oh, that sentence is too long, or this is that. And so for me, I'm fascinated by, why is this rule break working? And if you can't figure out why it's working, then to venture into that rule break because a clever person did it or a better writer did it might be risky.
I think that, here's the thing, what we're doing, these are words, these aren't bricks or stained glass. We get to break them, we get to do things and try and figure it out, and it, no harm no foul, right? If you can try. I have a friend who published a novella, and it is, oh God, 50, no, it wasn't 50, it was like 35,000 words, and it was 7 sentences. And he won the freaking Coeur d'Alene. It was 7 sentences. And that's when I learned that when I read, I breathe with the punctuation, because I would be reading and I would start getting lightheaded because I wasn't breathing, because I wasn't like hitting a period. So
Suffering.
Break rules. Like, who would write, who on earth has the audacity to write a 5,000 word long sentence? Yet he did it and he won an award. So like, I maybe almost think, like, if it scares you, do it more.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. And then I suppose continue to develop, just so Yeah, so people get away with it are like the geniuses, and I wouldn't ever think that I am a genius, but like Infinite Jest, how does that make top 50 books everybody should read, especially in audio form with all the footnotes? Like that's torment. I couldn't get through it. But anyway, I'll just kind of wrap up, kind of circling back. So I had an exercise. Anyway, I'm so glad I you came and thank you so much for that. I did an exercise a couple of years ago. It was actually for the Las Vegas conference. I submitted two first pages. One of them was my work in progress. The other was a work for which, when I sent it out, I had multiple agents and um, publishers. And what was really funny to me is that the one that is still work in progress, two chapters away. Everybody liked that. The three panelists, great, we love this. For the other one that actually got all this attention, not a one said that they liked it. And I traced that back, or my logical brain decided it must be that somehow the setup, if they had read the title or the one sentence, it gave them just enough to care, whereas just cold reading the pages. In the end, I decided, actually pretty recently, to redo that first page because why not have everything going for you? Why rely on that? But I don't know what I'm asking of you. Just sometimes when I read new authors and I see so many of those devices in the first page, it just seems so forced that they're trying to put in there. So
It might be.
so
It might
I'm
be.
just yeah, I guess my radar is off is my conclusion. And uh yeah, is there anything that hmm, yeah, I mean, what would be the take home if I just said, okay, I read two page, one was this, but is somehow had this popularity? How would you explain that?
I would say that those three agents weren't your agent.
Weren't my agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
what I always tell, I'm I don't teach at the university level anymore, and this is probably part of the reason why. I always tell all my creative writing classes, look, opinions are like buttholes. Like there's 8 billion of them on the planet, and the only one that matters really is yours.
Oh
So,
my
like,
God.
everybody's
Uh,
gonna have an opinion. It doesn't mean your
yeah,
work is wrong. It means that
yeah,
it wasn't for that person, and
yeah,
it you. I do you does anybody here do like other art forms other than writing?
yeah.
Like yeah, like knitting or painting or anything else like that.
Photography. Yeah.
I took a pottery class, and it ended up changing my whole worldview on writing, weirdly. And from a master potter, and he said, you have to um, exist, persist, and insist. So you have to find a way to exist to practice your craft. You have to resist the idea that other people's opinion matters more than you. And you have to persist in that it has to continue to be exciting and new to you to drive your passion. So you have to protect those three things constantly. And I think about the insist thing a lot, that if I listen to, I still remember one of the short stories that I wrote that was in entry level. When I was in a master's level class with a O. Henry Award winning workshop leader, and somebody later came up to me and he's like, "Oh yeah, I liked your short story. It was, I don't really usually read chick lit, but it was good." And it's like, what part was chick lit? Like this was a vague horror story. Like, yes, it had a woman as a protagonist, but what the heck? And that story went on to be published in Per Contra, and it's in the collection. But I mean, like if I would have been like, oh no, this is too chiclety, I have to, maybe I'll change the baby into, a briefcase, or, like screw that. Like it's your story. Do whatever you want. Don't listen to me.
Well, I listened to your butthole analogy, and I will use it.
I'm so glad
I'm
that
gonna,
that is what you're taking away from today. I've done something right.
no, but yeah, you're right. I think I had my worst moment in a read and critique situation, which I hadn't been in for a very long time, and have been very grateful for the ones I've had through Henderson, was I was trying to please everybody.
You
And my
can.
worst possible read was a version where I was trying to please everyone in the room, and it had no life to it, and there were so many things wrong. And I had no fun,
Yeah.
and I was mortified. And
This is a hobby until it isn't. So if you're not going to please yourself, why do this? If we're not going to be honest to our own work, why are we doing this? We're not doing this to please, Mr. Chicklet in the corner of the workshop. You're doing this to please yourself.
you know what they say about Mr. Chicklet anyway. But all
Yeah.
right, I'll let somebody else go. Thanks so much, Wendy.
Sure. Thanks, Bryn. Hey, Wolf.
Yeah, Wendy, would you change any of your suggestions for a sequel where the old readers know the character and what's happened, and new readers need to be caught up on the story?
I would still start a sequel with in the same spirit of how I started the first book, which means for me, it would still have those hooky, sticky elements. And then I would filter in the background information for the readers. I would feather them in by the first chapter, everything that they need to know. That said, I probably wouldn't ever write a part two. So I think though that you should read serials and see and study those first chapters of book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, and see how they're doing it. I most recently read the Murderbot series by Martha Wells, and I was paying specific attention to that. And she demands that the readers just keep up. And I think there might be something to that. I think I really enjoy that spirit. So I guess it really thinks like, do you expect that new readers would not have read the first book? So that would be my assumption is that I think most readers would have read the first book if they're not going to, and if they're picking up a second book in a series without reading the first one, maybe they're sociopaths. I don't know who does that. Sorry, apologies to anybody else who reads the second book in the series first.
I think I read the 8th book in Ray Katz's series first.
Good for you.
But if the sociopathy fits.
Maybe
I'm just such a completionist. Like I would never. Wolf, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Is that all? All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for your time today and for inviting me. I put in the chat a link to Entry Level if you would like to read them and be like, by the way, I did break one of my own rules in one of the short stories. And the funny thing about that is I had just taught my workshop about my rules about like don't start with a cold open dialogue. And then that night I was reading at a series and some of my students were and I realized the very story I was going to read started with a cold open dialogue. So that's my, even I do it. And sometimes it just works. Sometimes it's what is the most satisfying for you. And at the end of the day, none of these rules matter. It's what's satisfying for you. So with that, I believe in you and I believe in your work. Please keep going. And if you want to get in contact with me or reach out to me, I am Wendy at wendywimmer.com, or you can find my website, wendywimmer.com. And additionally, I run a Monday night group with writing prompts. I'd be happy to invite you. Tanya.
I'm wondering if you can think of any recent books or stories that you've read that caught your eye in that sense, because this is obviously a presentation that you've given over some time.
Yes.
Are there any new things that you think might be good to add to it? Because, maybe you just read it or something, you haven't had time to think about it in presentation form.
Yeah, if you haven't read Hamnet yet, I thought it was one of the best books that I've read in probably a decade. Maggie O'Farrell is doing some amazing stuff. I immediately then went and hailed like four other of her books, but I think Hamnet is probably the best of those. Piranesi by Susanna Clark, who wrote the Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell, or Mr. Strange. Piranesi is great because I love a unreliable narrator, and the main narrator of that is very unreliable. He doesn't know what's going on, and you have to kind of just figure it out. Um, it reminds me a lot of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, in some ways, where nothing is to be trusted, and there's um, a lot of scary people that the character's trusting but not trusting, or should more than the character does.
What's the author for that one again?
Susanna Clark, Piranesi.
Okay.
It's a retelling of the Minotaur myth in a labyrinth, but it's amazing. I just finished Severance by Ling Ma. I would say that it does not follow any of my rules, but it was still very good. And currently, I just finished the most recent Stephen King short story collection. And if you're a Stephen King fan, there's some good ones in there, and then there are some not good ones. But he has a great knack for starting stories. So if you want to study a master, Stephen King and his short stories, for sure, fantastic openings.
Thank you.
And Murderbot is so good. If you haven't watched or read Murderbot, read it or listen to it. It's amazing.
What was the name of the writer who did that Northtown Loris one with the baby?
Amber Wheeler Bacon.
Okay.
By the way, that I submitted that to the best of Best American Short Stories and for the O. Henry and the push card. That was like my top of my awards piles that year.
Well, it had a good intro. Can't wait to see how it ends.
Really good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a satisfying ending.
You said that one story, the parrot story, was one of your perfect short stories.
It is.
What are others?
Carmen Maria Machado's The Husband Stitch.
That's good.
Is really good. And then Amanda Davis, Fat Ladies Floated in the Sky Like Balloons. And both, actually, all three of those short stories are available online to read. So you could find them and read them. All start really well and end perfectly. Another good short story collection that she doesn't get enough love, but Jinsey Willett's Jenny and the Jaws of Life. Really wonderful. Full of really good, like, writer short stories.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We did read Hamnet, for the book club did a few years ago, and then we also did Matt Bell's book for January.
Oh, nice.
We recently read that one, so it was like, hey, we just did that.
Hey. Great minds.
Well, we probably learned of it from you, because Amanda is the one who led that one, so I'm guessing that she knew about it.
Oh, she might have. Yeah, I think I might have. I don't remember if I introduced her to Matt Bell when we were at Portland AWP or not, but he was around.
It was a very useful book. I've already recommended it.
It is. It's very good. There is another one that's out that I haven't read it yet, but Elizabeth McCracken's got a new craft book out that is good for keeping attention. I haven't finished it, but Elizabeth McCracken's one of my favorite writers. So if you're looking for
what it's called?
I wanted to say cranky late writer lady, but it's not that. The Long Game, Notes on Writing Fiction. She's very cranky, but I love her.
That's just what you call her, the
Yeah.
cranky writer lady.
She's cranky and just a ball of spitfire, and I love her.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all. Any other questions before we sign off?
Just thank
Awesome.
you. And I approve of the fake out wallpaper. It's awesome. I want to
Thank
steal
you.
that too.
Yeah, I wanted something that felt as dark as my heart.
Oh, now I have to read your writing.
Well,
All right,
I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much and have a great day.